What if I told you that right now, in your garden, you're losing up to a third of your harvest? And it's not because of the weather, not pests, not poor soil. It's because of one single mistake almost every gardener makes. A mistake nobody prints on the seed packet. A mistake your neighbors at the dacha repeat year after year, throwing up their hands and sighing, "Just a bad season." That mistake is how you arrange your plants in the bed. Stay with me, because in the next few minutes I'm going to show you 5 plant pairings, 5 simple combinations that can transform an ordinary garden into something that almost takes care of itself. No fertilizers, no chemicals, no extra money, just plants helping plants, the way nature designed them to. And if by the end of this video you don't look at your garden differently, I'll be genuinely surprised. Hit the like button, subscribe so you don't miss the next part, and let's get into it. Here's the thing nobody tells beginners. Plants are not silent, passive green objects sitting in the dirt. They're alive. They communicate. They release scents into the air, chemicals into the soil, signals through their roots. Some plants, when they grow side by side, literally make each other stronger. They drive away pests, they improve each other's flavor, they share nutrients, they shield each other from disease. And other plants? Other plants quietly choke each other out, competing for the same water, the same light, the same patch of soil, and the gardener never understands why nothing grows well. For thousands of years, farmers knew this instinctively. They didn't have laboratories. They had eyes, patience, and generations of observation. And what they figured out, modern science is only now confirming with hard data. Today I'm going to walk you through 5 pairings that work. Pairings proven both by the old village wisdom and by agricultural research. 5 pairs that cost you nothing to try because you're already growing these vegetables anyway. The only thing that changes is where you put them. Let's start with the most famous pair of all. The pair you've eaten together your whole life without realizing they belong together in the ground too. Tomatoes and basil. You know them from the kitchen. Sliced tomato, fresh basil leaf, a drizzle of olive oil, and suddenly it's summer in your mouth. But this duo isn't just a culinary marriage. It's an alliance that begins long before the harvest, right there in the soil, in the open air between the leaves. And once you understand why, you'll never plant tomatoes alone again. Here's what's happening. Basil is a powerhouse of essential oils. Crush a leaf between your fingers and you smell it instantly. That bright, peppery, almost medicinal aroma. That smell isn't there for you. It's a chemical weapon. The volatile oils basil releases into the air confuse and repel some of the most destructive pests that target tomatoes. Aphids, thrips, and whitefly. These insects don't find your tomato plant by sight. They find it by smell. They follow the scent of tomato leaves through the air like a bloodhound follows a trail. And basil? Basil throws sand in their eyes. It floods the air around your tomato bushes with a competing aroma so strong that the pests literally lose the trail. They fly past. They land somewhere else. They give up. But that's only the beginning. Gardeners have noticed for generations that tomatoes grown next to basil simply taste better, sweeter, more aromatic, more like the tomato you remember from childhood and can't seem to find in the supermarket anymore. Science hasn't fully cracked the mechanism yet. It's likely connected to the volatile compounds the two plants exchange through the air and possibly through the soil, but the effect is real, and it's been observed too many times to be coincidence. Then there's the question of light and shade. Tomato plants grow tall and bushy. By midsummer, they cast a generous shadow. Basil, planted at their feet, loves that midday shade. Direct sun in the hottest hours can scorch its tender leaves and push it to bolt early. So the tomato shelters the basil from the sun, and the basil in return stands guard against the insects. Each plant gives the other exactly what it needs. There's no competition here. There's a contract. Now, the practical part. How do you actually plant them? Simple. Tuck basil seedlings between your tomato bushes, spaced about 30 to 40 centimeters apart. Don't crowd them. Both plants want air circulation around their leaves. If you have a greenhouse, this pairing becomes even more powerful because in an enclosed space, pollinators are scarce, and basil flowers, once they appear, draw in bees and other beneficial insects that help your tomatoes set fruit. You're not just growing 2 crops in the same space. You're building a tiny ecosystem. Both plants want the same things from you: warmth, well-drained soil, deep but infrequent watering. You don't have to remember 2 different care schedules. Water one, you've watered the other. And here's the final tip, the one most gardeners miss. At the end of the season, when the basil is finished, don't pull it out and toss it on the compost heap. Chop it up right there and work it into the soil where it grew. Those same essential oils that protected your tomatoes from pests will keep working in the ground over the winter, suppressing fungal spores and enriching the earth for next year's planting. Nothing wasted. Everything returned. One pair, and already your garden is doing more with less. And we've barely started. For centuries, village gardeners noticed something strange. When they planted carrots and onions in separate beds, both crops suffered. Carrots came out twisted, tunneled, full of little white maggots. Onions rotted from the inside, their bulbs soft and useless by storage time. But when the same gardeners, by accident or by intuition, planted the two side by side, the problem vanished. The carrots came out clean and straight, the onions stored through the winter without a single soft spot. Nobody could explain it. They just knew it worked, and they passed the knowledge down like a family recipe. Today we know exactly why. Carrots and onions are locked in a defensive partnership against two of the most destructive pests in any vegetable garden, the carrot fly and the onion fly. Both insects are tiny. Both lay their eggs at the base of the plant. Both produce larvae that burrow into the root or bulb and destroy the harvest from the inside out. And both, this is the key, find their target by smell. The carrot fly follows the scent of carrot tops through the air. She can detect it from astonishing distances, but when you plant onions in the same bed, the sharp sulfur compounds released by onion leaves overwhelm her senses. She can't find the carrots. She flies on. The onion fly works the same way, hunting for the smell of onion, and the feathery, aromatic foliage of carrot tops does to her exactly what onion does to her cousin. It scrambles the signal. Two pests, two plants, mutual protection. Nature at her most elegant. But the alliance goes deeper than just smell. Look at how these two plants use the soil. Onion roots stay shallow, spreading out in the top 10 or 15 centimeters of earth. Carrots, on the other hand, drive a single long taproot straight down, 20, 30, sometimes 40 centimeters deep. They don't compete for water. They don't compete for nutrients. They divide the soil vertically, like neighbors in an apartment building who never disturb each other because one lives upstairs and one lives down. And there's a bonus. As onion bulbs swell, they gently break up the surface layer of soil, improving aeration. That loosened, oxygen-rich top layer is exactly what young carrot seedlings need to push through and establish themselves. The onion is, quite literally, preparing the bed for its neighbor. Planting is straightforward. Alternate rows, one row of onions, one row of carrots, and so on across the bed. Both crops want the same thing from you: full sun, moderate watering, and light, well-drained soil. They're harvested at roughly the same time, late summer to early autumn, so you clear the whole bed in one pass and prepare it for the next rotation. No leftover stragglers, no half-empty plot. One last trick from the old gardeners. When you trim onion tops or peel onions in the kitchen, save the dry skins and the green leftovers. Scatter them along the carrot rows like a mulch. The lingering smell adds a second layer of confusion for any carrot fly that wanders too close. Free pest control from your kitchen scraps. Now let's move to the third pair. And here the mechanism shifts completely. Because gardening isn't only about scaring pests away, sometimes the smarter strategy is to invite the right guests in. Cucumbers and dill. Dill is one of those plants every gardener already grows almost without thinking. It's in your salads, your pickles, your soups. So here's a question. Why are you growing it in a separate corner of the garden when it could be working for you in the cucumber bed? When dill flowers, those bright yellow umbrellas that open in midsummer, it becomes one of the most powerful magnets for beneficial insects in the entire vegetable kingdom. Bees come for the nectar. Bumblebees come for the pollen. But more importantly, predatory insects come too. Hoverflies, parasitic wasps, ladybugs, lacewings, ground beetles. These are the soldiers of your garden. And what do they hunt? Aphids, the #1 enemy of cucumbers. A single aphid colony left alone can drain a young cucumber plant in days, curling its leaves and stunting its growth. But surround that cucumber bed with flowering dill and you've built a biological shield. The predators move in, set up shop, and patrol your cucumbers around the clock, for free, while you sleep. There's a nuance you need to know though. Young dill, still in its leafy stage, is a perfect neighbor. But mature dill, fully grown and heavy with seed heads, planted right up against cucumber stems, can slightly suppress them. The two plants compete for light and root space at that point. So the rule is simple. Plant dill at the edges of the cucumber bed, or with a buffer of 30 or 40 centimeters. Give the dill room to flower without crowding the cucumber vines. The two plants fit together physically too. Cucumbers either sprawl along the ground or climb a trellis. Dill grows straight up, narrow and tall, taking up almost no horizontal space. If your cucumbers are on a trellis, sow dill on the south side of the bed. It gets full sun, the cucumbers get a fragrant border, and you've used every centimeter of soil intelligently. There's one more benefit, quieter but real. Dill roots release compounds that improve the soil's microbial life around them. Healthier soil microbes mean stronger cucumber roots, better nutrient uptake, fewer fungal problems. You don't see it, but it's happening. This pairing is especially valuable in greenhouses, where pests multiply quickly in the warm, still air and natural predators rarely find their way inside. Plant dill in a greenhouse and you've imported the entire pest control crew. If this is helping you, hit that like button. It genuinely tells me to keep making videos like this. And let's keep going. 2 more pairs ahead and the next one is going to surprise you. If you've ever grown cabbage, you know the heartbreak. You watch it for weeks. The head starts to form. You're already imagining the sauerkraut, the soup, the stuffed cabbage rolls. And then one morning, you walk out and the leaves are riddled with holes. Or the whole plant is wilting from the base. Or there's a fine green dust of tiny beetles jumping off the leaves as you approach. Cabbage has more enemies than almost any other vegetable in the garden. The cabbage fly, aphids, the cabbage white butterfly, the cutworm, flea beetles. An entire army, and they all want the same thing. There's a plant that fights back against nearly all of them at once. And almost nobody plants it next to cabbage. Cabbage and celery. Celery is one of the most underrated defenders in the vegetable world. Both its leaves and its roots release a powerful, distinctive aroma. Sharp, green, slightly medicinal. And that smell is poison to the cabbage pest network. Not literally poison, but a confusing fog that breaks the chain of how these insects find their host plant. Take the cabbage white butterfly, the one whose caterpillars chew your leaves into lace. She finds cabbage by tracking the specific scent compounds released by plants in the cabbage family. When celery is mixed into the bed, that signal is buried under celery's stronger aroma. The butterfly hovers, gets confused, and lays her eggs somewhere else. This matters most in early summer, during the first wave of egg laying. Get the celery in early, and you've prevented the entire infestation before it begins. Flea beetles, those tiny jumping insects that pepper young cabbage leaves with pinholes, react the same way. They don't like the smell. They move on. Planting is simple. Place celery around the perimeter of the cabbage bed, or alternate it with cabbage plants every 1 or 2 spaces in the row. There's one thing to watch. Celery wants more moisture than cabbage. The fix is easy. Dig the celery's planting holes a little deeper, mulch generously around its base, and the moisture problem solves itself. Both plants love sun, both prefer cool to moderate weather, and both actually appreciate a little shade during the hottest weeks of summer, which they'll naturally provide for each other as they grow. 2 more bonuses, and they're worth knowing. Celery's broad lower leaves shade the soil around the cabbage roots, keeping it cool and suppressing weeds. Less work for you, less competition for the cabbage. And when the season ends and you chop celery remains into the soil, those same aromatic compounds that drove pests away from the leaves go to work underground, gradually suppressing soil pathogens, including the dreaded clubroot fungus that can ruin cabbage beds for years. One plant working for you above ground and below during the season and after. Now to the final pair. And this one isn't just clever gardening. This one is ancient wisdom, tested over thousands of years on an entire continent. Beans and corn. Long before anyone wrote a gardening book, the indigenous peoples of the Americas were growing these 2 plants together, along with squash as a third partner, and calling them the 3 sisters. 2 of those sisters, beans and corn, form what may be the most elegant plant partnership ever discovered. And once you understand it, you'll wonder why we ever stopped doing it. Here's the magic. Corn is tall, hungry, and demanding. It pulls enormous amounts of nitrogen out of the soil to build those thick stalks and heavy ears. Plant corn alone year after year, and your soil goes bankrupt. The plants grow weaker, the ears smaller, and eventually nothing works. Beans do the opposite. Beans are members of the legume family, and on their roots live tiny bacteria called rhizobia. These bacteria perform something close to alchemy. They pull nitrogen straight out of the air, the same nitrogen that makes up most of the atmosphere we breathe, and convert it into a form plants can actually use. The bean plant feeds these bacteria sugars from its leaves, and in exchange, the bacteria fertilize the soil. For free. Forever, as long as beans are growing. Plant beans next to corn, and the corn drinks that nitrogen straight from the soil around the bean roots. The hungry sister is fed by the generous one. No fertilizer needed. But the partnership doesn't stop there. Climbing beans, the kind that send up long vines looking for support, find that support in the corn stalk itself. The corn becomes a living trellis. You don't buy stakes. You don't build frames. The bean simply spirals up the corn, reaching for sunlight, while the corn stands firm because its leaves are already higher than the bean can climb. The ear of corn is never shaded out. Look at the soil. Corn roots spread wide and shallow, gathering surface moisture and nutrients. Bean roots go deeper and gentler, focused more on fixing nitrogen than on pulling minerals up. The two share the underground space without fighting, just like carrots and onions do. And the beans' broad, low leaves create a living mulch across the soil surface, holding in moisture, blocking weeds, keeping the earth cool through the hottest weeks of July. Here's how to plant them. Sow your corn first. Wait until the stalks are 20 to 25 centimeters tall, strong enough to support a climber. Then plant 2 or 3 bean seeds about 15 centimeters away from each corn stalk. The beans will find the corn on their own. They know what to do. They've been doing it for thousands of years, and the gift keeps giving long after the harvest. When you pull the bean plants at the end of the season, leave the roots in the ground. All that nitrogen those bacteria fixed stays in the soil, feeding whatever you plant there next spring. You fertilize next year's bed without lifting a bag. There's even a nutritional poetry to this pair. Corn gives you carbohydrates, beans give you protein. Eaten together, they form a complete food. The plants feed each other in the garden, and then they feed you in a way neither could alone. 2 sisters, 1 harvest, 0 waste. Take a step back and look at what we've just walked through. 5 pairs, 5 different mechanisms. Tomatoes and basil, fooling pests with scent and exchanging shade for protection. Carrots and onions, scrambling each other's enemies and dividing the soil between them. Cucumbers and dill, calling in an army of beneficial insects. Cabbage and celery, building a fortress of aroma against an entire battalion of attackers. Beans and corn, feeding each other through the air, the soil, and the very structure of their bodies. Notice something? Not one of these pairs requires you to buy anything new. Not one demands special equipment, expensive fertilizer, chemical sprays, or hours of extra labor. You were already going to plant tomatoes. You were already going to plant basil. The only thing that changes, is where you put them in the bed. The cost of this change is exactly 0. The benefit can be a third more harvest, half the pest damage, and soil that gets healthier every season instead of more exhausted. This is what natural gardening actually means. Not a brand on a package, not an organic certification sticker. Just the simple truth that in nature, no plant grows alone. Every wild plant on Earth lives surrounded by neighbors. Other plants, insects, fungi, microbes, birds, animals. And over millions of years, every species has worked out who its allies are and who its enemies are. When we put a single crop in a long, lonely row and wonder why it gets devoured by pests, we've stripped away every ally that plant evolved to depend on. We've left it standing alone in a hostile world, and then we blame the world. Companion planting is just giving the plants their friends back. Here's the deeper logic, and it's worth holding on to. A garden bed isn't a container, it's a living system. The soil is alive with billions of microorganisms. The air above your plants is full of insects making decisions every second based on smell, sight, and instinct. Your plants are constantly releasing chemicals, signals, invitations, and warnings. When you choose what to plant next to what, you're not arranging decorations. You're writing the rules of a tiny ecosystem. You decide who gets invited in, who gets driven out, who feeds whom, who shelters whom. That's an extraordinary amount of power, and most gardeners never realize they have it. So what do you actually do with all this, starting tomorrow? You don't have to rebuild your entire garden. Please don't. That's the mistake people make after watching a video like this. They get excited, they tear everything up, they overcommit, and by July they're exhausted and discouraged. Don't do that. Pick one pair. Just one. The one that fits what you're already planning to grow this season. If you're growing tomatoes, add basil between the bushes. If you're growing carrots, drop in a row of onions beside them. If you have a cucumber bed, sow dill at the edges. One pair, one bed, one small experiment. Watch what happens. At the end of the season, compare it to what you remember from previous years. You'll see the difference with your own eyes, and once you've seen it, you won't go back. Then next year, add a second pair. The year after that, a third. In 3 or 4 seasons, your entire garden will be running on these partnerships, and you'll wonder how you ever gardened any other way. Here's a habit that will change everything. Before each planting season, sit down with a piece of paper and sketch your beds. Don't just write what you want to grow. Write who goes next to whom. Ask yourself 2 questions for every plant. Who is its friend and who is its competitor? Don't put 2 heavy feeders in the same bed fighting over the same nutrients. Don't put 2 tall plants where one will starve the other of light. Put the giver next to the taker. Put the protector next to the vulnerable. Put the scent maker next to the one being hunted. 5 minutes of planning on paper saves you a season of disappointment in the dirt. And remember that this knowledge isn't fragile. It isn't a trend. It isn't going to be replaced next year by some new technique. The pairs I've shown you today have been working for hundreds, in some cases thousands, of years. The 3 sisters fed entire civilizations. Carrots and onions kept European villages alive through hard winters. These aren't theories. These are facts the Earth has been demonstrating for longer than any of us have been alive. One last thought before we finish. A garden responds to attention. It really does. Not to chemicals, not to gadgets, not to the latest miracle product on the shelf. To attention. The more closely you watch, the more carefully you listen to what your plants are telling you, the more generously the garden answers back. The gardeners who get the best harvests aren't the ones with the biggest budgets or the fanciest tools. They're the ones who pay attention, who notice that the basil seems happier near the tomato, who see that the cabbage with celery beside it has fewer holes in its leaves, who pick up the patterns and trust them. You already have everything you need. You have soil, you have seeds, you have hands, and now you have a few centuries of accumulated wisdom packed into 5 simple partnerships. The rest is just showing up and watching. If this video helped you see your garden a little differently, please hit the like button. It genuinely matters and helps other gardeners find this. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And share this with someone in your life who grows their own food, because every gardener deserves to know that their plants want to help each other if we'll just let them. See you in the next video. Until then, go plant something next to something else and see what happens.